In the previous episode, we saw Anastasia and Redford at a party where Redford tells Anastasia that, "You'll never be able to bear Redford's name." Hearing this, Anastasia let go of Redford's hand. She tells Theodore that she guesses Theodore shouldn't have said that. Lately, there's been lots of letters that had the Emperor's seal sent to the Indus written that he asked to let Anastasia live here. After reading the letter, Redfoot was very angry and said, "Does your Majesty want me to make this marriage official?" The next morning, Anastasia comes to stay at Redfort's house, and Redfort is very upset to see Anastasia. Anastasia did expect that the life Anastasia will lead in the Duck's mansion won't be easy. But she didn't think that the Duck would never bat an eye and treat her so coldly. One morning while Anastasia was walking in the garden, a servant came and said to Anastasia that the Red Fort doesn't want Anastasia to go anywhere of her own will. Anastasia was very surprised to hear this. She said, "Then what Duck want I sit in my room all day?" Job then smiled and said, "Yes, that's what you thought." He clearly has never come to see Anastasia since she has been here. The server said, "If you still want to get outside, then please avoid where his eyes can land." Why would Anastasia have to obediently obey Red Fort orders? Since that's what she thinks, she always watch exactly where he goes and sit right there on purpose. One day, when Redford was walking through the garden, Redford was annoyed when Anastasia deliberately sat down in front of him. After seeing Anastasia, Redford tell his servant to clean the pile of trastee in the garden out of his eyes. The owner's fiancé is heated by their own master, so being insulated in the mansion is inevitable. Whenever the servants of the house saw Anastasia, they started talking bad things about her. Anastasia himself doesn't know when he's become the torn of everyone's eyes. Disbelief. Asia thought to herself, "Whatever you say, it's like air to me. What's there to be afraid of seeing those scornful eyes? Compared to seeing two people hanging in front of her eyes, there are nothing." Those memories are still tormenting Anastasia. But she won't starve staying here. She can stand straight with just that alone. Anastasia laughed and said there was no point in being here. Anastasia sees Theodore and greets him good morning, but after seeing Anastasia he closes the door. Every time Theodore looked at Anastasia he never seemed to bring himself to like her. Especially on the day, it reminded him that Earl Everdeen had that same look. And 2 years had passed. One day, a lady sends a letter to Anastasia to invite her to the tea party. That lady was the daughter of a very famous marquis in politics. She can't not come but to count all those dresses she had. She get paid for shopping, but it's not much. That lady has such a great influence so she cannot dress casually too. Even a little carelessness can cause enmity to all of the nobility. She was looking for something she could wear with a little sewing. The dress design was a bit strange, but this blue dress material is good. She chose the dress to embellish. Anastasia asked a servant to clean the dress and call a patchworker. The servant said with a devilish smile, "The patchwork, huh? Roger that." After that she was scooped out of enough money to get the dress decorated. On the day of the tea party, the servants were smiling. In the last 2 years these servants never forgot to sabotaging Anastasia. Even so, openly vandalizing like this and cut it to the point where it can be adjusted anymore. The fabric cannot be reused either. The pulse of the skirts are dirty too. Anastasia didn't expect those guys to be this much. The servants were laughing and saying, "Oh, what happened here?" Anastasia looks at them and says, "You won't even hide it now." Anastasia adds, "You are behind all this, aren't you?" Servant laughed and said, "What are you saying? You should go now or you will be late." She has no authority in this palace whatsoever, that even the service despise and mock her. In the end she couldn't adhere to the dress code. He came in a yellow dress and everyone started laughing at him. A woman came forward and said that Anastasia has a unique sense of style. Anastasia thanks Lady Slocking for inviting her here, and unfortunately she couldn't read their assigned dress due to some issues. The girl says in disbelief that this dress suits you well. Throughout the tea party, they cheat Anastasia as if she were the cake they were served. They pierced and sliced her with their gazes and words of contempt. When Anastasia was coming home at night, she thought she just wanted to live a little. Servants bring him cold water for bathing or rotten banana food for him to eat. This is no change from his previous life. He can take everything. It's not something special that can't take it. Suddenly I overheard some servants saying that if she wasn't the daughter of a noble family, he would have paid her for one night. Another servant said, "What are you saying? You will only waste your money. He has nothing but good looks." Saying this, they started laughing. On the other hand, Anak came and was totally shocked to hear these words. He ran to his room and locked the door. He started telling himself that he can take them. They are nothing to him. He is fine. Just good food, good clothes, and a place to stay and to live a little is a lot for him. She began to tell herself not to show any weakness. If she was measurable, Theodore would laugh at her and break off this engagement. There is no difference in this life compared to his previous life. The next morning a servant brought her rotten food that no human could eat. Anastasia looked at the servant. That job said, "What happened? What is the problem?" Anastasia smiled and said, "Are you asking me to eat these?" The servant said, "The food is very expensive, so don't waste it." Anastasia was completely surprised to hear this. The servant asks him to eat this really rotten food. He knows that he can never expect anything good in this house, but what he has done is that he has to put up with this. Why hate him so much? So if that's the reason you really want to hate me, that's why Anastasia threw that rotten soup on the servant. Anastasia said, "If you really want to despise me that much, I will give you a reason to despise me." Behaving well for so long and obeyed everything they said. So why are you doing this all of a sudden? Anastasia asked the servants to bring another bowl of good soup for her as long as she wants well. The maids started wondering why she is suddenly behaving like this. No one in this palace supports her in any way. It is a duck palace in Redford. The maid laughed and said, "Why should I do this for you? There is no one beside you. You threw this food on me yourself. And besides, if it goes outside, the duck will be very angry with you." Before saying this, Anastasia came in front of him and slapped him hard. This shocked the maid. Her cheeks turned red and Anastasia's hand also turned red. Anastasia keeps thinking these nonsense just to save Redford's honor. It's not that Anastasia is looking for anything expensive. She just wants to have some peace, but that's not possible here. The maid suddenly started to shout that what Anastasia did now. The maid had blood coming out of her face as she started yelling at Anastasia and told her that Anastasia must be punished for her actions and that she would go and tell the duck. Hearing this laugh, "He will not eat." Anastasia starts beating him without letting him finish his sentence. Anastasia's actions are witnessed by a servant from outside and thinks that if Anastasia is not stopped now she might kill the servant, so she rushes and informs the duck. Anastasia beats the maid so badly that her face is cut and she apologizes to Anastasia. Once facial notice that a lot has been cut from his face and he can't work anywhere else with this look. Jobs and begs Anastasia not to beat him again and to forgive him. Anastasia then says that they never responded to Anastasia actions. They only defamed Anastasia behind her back and tortured her, but Anastasia never said anything. The servant apologized to him that he would never do this mistake again. Anastasia tells him to go out and convince someone to come in so he can be alone for a bit. Fearing the maid ran away from there. Anastasia has endured so much it's really pathetic. That rotten soup gave Anastasia a headache. Anastasia made no mistake, she could take anything as long as she wasn't hungry. Anastasia goes to the front of the balcony. She feels very good today. At that time, a servant from behind said that the duck is calling him. He never called the duck and now he is calling him to kill a maid. Anastasia entered the house and looked at him very angry. He tells Anastasia that his head is broken. Anastasia says, "What a silly question." Anastasia said she was in such a place. Is there any need to maintain